Welcome everybody to Forza Motorsport 7, and today we're taking a look at the 1967 Ford Falcon XR GT. Now this was part of the second generation, and it was the first iteration of that generation, as the generation was split into 4 different iterations from 1966 to 1972, with the XT, XW and XY following this when it was replaced in 1968. And yeah, the styling was based on the third generation US Falcon, and yeah, it was promoted as the Mustang bred Falcon, as this GT version was not only the first Australian Falcon to be offered with a V8 engine, but it was also using the V8 engine from the Mustang. And yeah, it also was the only version of the XR to come with a 4-speed manual, so a very sporty car in comparison to the inline 6 3-speed manual car that was the base version. And yeah, as a result of all of that, this GT version heralded the dawn of the Aussie muscle car. So yeah, very important car, not just in terms of you know, Ford in Australia, but Australian cars in general. And yeah, I have to admit, it's easily one of my favourite 60s V8 rear-wheel drive cars. Easily would be top 10, and yeah, a lot of reasons for that. Firstly, because obviously it's a pretty much a 4-door practical Mustang, because it's got the same engine, not quite the same power or torque, but it's still got the same engine. It's rear-wheel drive, 4-speed manual, but yeah, it's a practical version of the Mustang. Big boot, plenty of room in the rear, as you can see, and obviously plenty of room up front as well. And yeah, being a saloon, it's also obviously got all of the headroom that GT would not have. So yeah, 4-door Mustang basically, and yeah, that's a appealing notion to me, because that pretty much means that it's not only a muscle car, but it's also you know, a sports saloon, dare say. Now granted, obviously it's not going to be as good in terms of handling as other, you know, sports saloons from Europe in the 70s, 80s and the like, but it's still a fairly good car in terms of handling. And yeah, got a fair decent amount of power as well, from its 4.7 litre Windsor V8, producing 225 horsepower and 305 pounds-feet of torque. Now granted, that's way down on the Mustang, which had around 271, and it had about 7 extra pounds-feet of torque as well. And yeah, it doesn't weigh anywhere near as little as well as a Mustang. Weighs about 600 pounds more at 3,150 pounds, but yeah, that's to be expected to have a bit more weight and a bit less power when this is obviously being a more practical, family-orientated muscle car that is also sporty. So yeah, that's a good compromise, quite frankly, between practicality and usability and obviously performance, because yeah, even though Mustang did have a decent sized boot and you could get people in the rear, it certainly was more orientated towards just being a driver's car, or you know, driving with a passenger, whereas this, you can have your whole family in it, you can pack up the boot with a lot of stuff, but at the same time it will perform pretty damn well, and yeah, also get up to speed fairly quickly, though again nowhere near as quick as the Mustang. To see how not as quick, let's get out onto the track and see what it can do. Alright, so we're at Virginia International Raceway for a couple of laps, so let's see what this saloon version of the Mustang essentially can do. So yeah, I like the sound of the engine, again, because it is essentially still a Mustang engine, and there was nothing wrong with that engine in the first place. And yeah, it's, like I said, nowhere near as quick as the Mustang, and neither is it as good in terms of handling, because it's got an extra weight on its side. But it's not half bad, certainly for a late 60s muscle car. You could do a hell of a lot worse, and yeah, obviously in the 70s there were far more underpowered muscle cars from the period, so yeah, it's certainly got one up on those kind of vehicles, and yeah, it's an enjoyable car to drive. It might lean a little bit, and yeah, it's certainly nowhere near as quick as you'd like from a car with a sizable V8 engine, but it's still by no means slow. 0 to 16, 9.7 seconds, 0 to 120.8 seconds, and it'll go into a top speed of 140 miles an hour. So yeah, fairly decent top speed. Again, that is slower than the Mustang by about 5 miles an hour. Its 0 to 60 time is slower by nearly 2.3 seconds. But weirdly though, it's apparently, according to this game, 0.6 or so of a second quicker to 100, which is, again, fairly decent. It's probably down to the gearing or something like that that's making this slightly quicker, but they're hardly the worst times ever, especially when you consider this is a practical 4-door saloon. that has plenty of space, and yeah, is obviously going to be more than usable over a standard Mustang. And yeah, it's not meant to tear up the drag strips or anything like that. It's meant to be a sporty, practical car, and it does that very, very well. And yeah, thankfully, obviously, we get the 4-speed manual. Otherwise, in a normal inline 6 Falcon, you only get a 3-speed manual, or heaven forbid, a 3-speed automatic. But yeah, 4-speed manual was exclusive to this, and yeah, like I said, it's a very important car in Australian car history, because, like I said, it's pretty much the first muscle car from Australia. Falcons before this were lumbered with small capacity inline 6s, which yeah, didn't generate anywhere near the same kind of power as this, and neither sounded as good or provided the sportier kind of aspects that you'd like. And yeah, not only was this obviously good on the road, but it was also apparently really good on the track as well. It was the first V8 powered car to win at Bathurst, I think, at the 500/1000 race. So yeah, it's also a fairly good car in terms of racing as well, which is obviously a good thing when you are on a racing game like this, which is track orientated, because yeah, it means it's got some racing pedigree behind it as well. So yeah, I really do like it. Like I said, it would make my top 10 in a if I was doing a top 10 muscle cars from the 60s, especially on this game, because obviously we don't have the widest selection. But if it was to be across even this game and Forza Horizon 4, then yeah, it still would make the top 10. And yeah, not quite sure why I like it so much, because yeah, like I said, it's not as powerful as a Mustang, it's not as quick as a Mustang, not as good in terms of handling, and it's certainly not quite as iconic, especially in the US and the UK in terms of muscle cars. But yeah, I just enjoy it. I guess it's because it's, you know, somewhat of an ordinary body. It's not got, you know, hoods, scoops, or spoilers or anything like that to really differentiate it between an inline 6 Falcon over this one. The only real difference is the black stripes down the side. So yeah, it's kind of like it's like a sleeper car of the 60s, I guess you could say, because if you weren't hearing it, you'd think it was just a normal Falcon. But as soon as you turn it on and as soon as you start racing against someone, they're going to get a big surprise, because yeah, even though 225 horsepower and 305 pound-feet of torque doesn't sound all that great, because it doesn't weigh anywhere near as much as other muscle cars from the same period, it's able to put that power to good use. So yeah, great car really. And yeah, it just shows how versatile the Windsor V8 is in this car. It's obviously using the Mustang originally, using this, also using the Sunbeam Tiger, which was a convertible sports car from the UK, and it worked really well in that car as well. So yeah, it's as much as a showcase for Australian muscle cars as it is for American V8 engines. The fact that that engine is so versatile, it can be used in, you know, 2-door muscle car, or 4-door muscle car, and a 2-door convertible sports car from the UK. So yeah, if you've never tried this car out, then do try it, because yeah, it is one of the better muscle cars from the 60s. And yeah, I feel like it unfortunately gets overlooked in comparison to later Falcons that were more powerful and quicker. But as a first V8 powered Falcon, it's great. And yeah, it surprises me that it took 6 or 7 years for it to actually occur, because we had a whole generation beforehand that didn't have a V8 at all. So yeah, it does surprise me it took that long, but I'm glad that they eventually did it, because it is a cracking car, and yeah, more than deserves some extra look at, or another look at by other people, quite frankly. Nonetheless, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.